Where's the...
Right here. I'm going to scoot in. All right.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
My name is Jacob. I'm a Nubiak, and my native name is Alaskan. I was born and raised here in Fairbanks. My mom was raised here as well. My ancestry is from Wainwright and Point Hope, two small communities about 600 miles north of Fairbanks. My siblings and I grew up enjoying the bounties of Alaska and would hunt moose, fish salmon, pick blueberries in the summer, and hang out with our cousins. I'm a junior at Brigham Young University, Idaho, and I'm studying nursing.
Okay, and hello everyone. My name is Mason. This might sound a little repetitive because as Jacob mentioned, we are cousins. But I'm also in Nubiak, and I'm also born and raised here in Fairbanks. But my family has a cabin that's about 150 miles west of here, which is only about 100 miles from Denali, where we have a beautiful view of the mountain. We like to spend our time hunting, fishing, camping, and just enjoy nature. Now, as JR mentioned, I did get a little tired of the winters here. So I moved across the country to study nursing down at the University of North Florida. But we are all now in the Tanana Valley, which is the heart of Athabascan country and on the ancestral lands of the Dana people. Today, Jacob and I will be sharing with you how the Athabascans skillfully survived in this environment for over 10,000 years, and how they transitioned to village life and Western culture within the past century. Now, please be sure that you're staying with Jacob and I. As you may have noticed, we are rotating with another group, and we just want to be sure you all get the chance to see and hear everything. Then at the end of the tour, you'll have some free time to roam around on your own, ask questions, and take pictures of anything you may have missed. Now, around us here, you can see some of the largest game animals found here in Alaska. Starting over to your far right with the hide of a grizzly bear. In the middle is a moose, and then closest to me is a caribou. Then if you look over to your left, you can see an example of a full-size bull moose. He was taken just north of us in the White Mountains and has a trophy-size 73.5-inch rack. Now, the moose were the most important resource to the Athabascan people. And while caribou travel in herds, moose are solitary, tending to travel alone. So the Athabascans had to become very skilled at calling the moose. One way to do this was by taking a shoulder blade from a previous kill and scraping it against a tree like Jacob will show us. Wow, isn't he a skilled hunter? Now, this sound imitates the moose's antlers scraping against a tree, and because those bull moose are very territorial, this sound might alert another moose, alert the moose on his home turf to investigate the intruder and see who's on his turf. Another way to call the moose was verbally, using a birch bark megaphone like this. The hunter would imitate the moose's mating call, which is a very deep and a guttural grunting sound. Would you like a demonstration? Okay, Jacob? Once a moose was brought into the area using the real mating call, the hunter would then use a bone-tipped spear to provoke the animal to charge. They would then plant the spear in the ground at a steep angle, so when the moose came charging and reared up to stomp the hunter, it'd be forced to impale itself on the tip of that spear. Then all our brave hunter had to do was simply but very quickly roll out from underneath that heavy falling animal. And then once the meat was processed, they would begin to prepare the hide to be used for shelter, clothing, and and lashings. They would start by scraping off all the hair and flesh using sharpened shin bones from the moose and the caribou. This would leave us with a large piece of rawhide like this, which could be cut into strips called babiche. Babiche was used as lashings to web snowshoes or just as an all-purpose rope. Now, obviously, rawhide is far too stiff to be made into clothing just yet. So to continue the tanning process, they would soak this in a solution of water and fermented moose brains. Now, this milky fluid has acidic enzymes that helps break down all the tough fibers in that coat. They would then begin to scrape in the hide using a tool like this clevasse, which is very similar to the northern ulu, except it has a serrated edge for scraping rather than cutting. And then finally, after weeks and weeks of soaking, scraping, and wringing out that hide, it would finally be reduced to a soft piece of material like this.
To preserve all that hard work, they would stretch the hide over a campfire and smoke it. You can always tell a true native tanned hide by its rich, smoky smell. Now I'd like to share some pieces of traditional regalia with you all. This is a ceremonial maiden's dress. And this is a ceremonial chief's coat. They are both museum quality garments made from tanned moose hides that were prepared using the same traditional methods that Mason just explained. After contact with the Russians, the Athabascans would trade furs for glass seed beads and became very well known for their beautiful and intricate beadwork designs. The flowers here all have symbolic meaning. On the maiden's dress, you would see flowers commonly found in her village, such as the bluebell and our state flower, the forgive-me-not. On the chief's coat, the flowers symbolize animal tracks in hopes of bringing the Athabascan man good luck on the track line. Both of these garments are trimmed with beaver fur. The buttons on the chief's coat are made of cross-sections of moose antler. While the buttons on the maiden's dress are cross-sections of caribou antler. The garment that Mason and I were wearing is called an atigluk. It's an everyday working garment that is always handmade and often from a family pattern. Now I think you're really going to like this next piece. Avery is wearing an Athabascan Yukon-style women's winter parka. It is all traditional, except for that big zipper down the middle. That's there so she could get it on and off quickly during these warm summer days. Traditionally, it'd be sewn together as a pullover style parka. The body of the parka is made of beaver, which has been sheared for design. It is trimmed with calfskin, river otter, and timber wool. Now Avery's going to show us the sunshine ruff. The outer part of the ruff is made of timber wool, while the inner part is made of wolverine. Wolverine is always sewn closest to the face because the natural oil in the fur helps prevent frostbite. The leftover pieces would be sewn to tassels like these, which are wolverine tipped with timber wool. Avery would sew those onto her parka to show that her family were great trappers. They caught the tricky wolverine. Now Avery's going to show us the designs of the back of the parka. Beadwork and skin sewing techniques were passed down one generation after the other, and each family had their own distinct pattern. For example, the artist that made this parka is from Fort Yukon and features her family's traditional wild rose pattern. You can always, whenever an Athabascan woman would travel to another village, you can always tell where she was from based on the designs on the back of her parka. Thanks, Avery. Now, if you didn't get the picture you wanted, don't worry. Someone will be back here to model that parka after our tour today. Now, for some interesting facts about the parka, it weighs about 23 pounds and is made for 40 below weather, so it gets very hot wearing it in the summer days. It took about 8 months to make, and it's been appraised for $35,000. And I only take cash. But seriously, it's priceless to us. So if you come back and take pictures, we just ask that you please don't touch it. And now at our next stop, Mason and I will be sharing with you folks how these cabins were built, why there's grass on our roofs, and I'll show you some furs from animals found here in Alaska. So you folks follow Mason down this trail there, get you to your next stop.
Are you going to learn some things?
The right compromise thing. Waiting for someone. I'm not going to do
Oh, we can come back through. Okay. Oh, I can come back through.